Welcome to episode number 24. Nick Granville in Wellington, myself in Auckland, and we'll get straight into it. Nick, what have you been up to? Fill us in.
It's been quiet on the gig front. There's jazz festivals right around the corner, so I haven't had any gigs this weekend, but I actually I did some teaching on the Music Works Festival, the MIFA it's called, Music Works Educational Festival. So I did 2 guitar workshops on that.
Oh, nice.
On Wednesday and Thursday, and then I was the judge of the band competition. So, and then we did a faculty concert at the end of it as well. So that was kind of fun. And then in the weekend I was actually on another competition, but in this one I was actually filming.
Do you like judging?
No. I always find them tricky. I mean, they're all good in their own kind of ways, and it's like, you know, some bands are sometimes more like it's really clear. When it's not clear, it's hard. The hardest bit is actually having to write something positive all the time, and you know, that's always the thing. You know, it's like, because you don't want to cut any. Like if someone is just beginning, it's like they know where they're at. Do you know what I mean? They know the beginning. They're so nervous. They're trying to do, and you're trying to find something positive out of it all, and it can be challenging in that sense. And the interesting thing is, my hands started getting sore. I realized how little I use a pen these days, and so having a whole day of writing just crap. I was like, man, my arm's getting sore. Like, what the hell's going on? Because everything's at a computer now. If I write it all, you know. Yeah.
I used to have much.
What about you?
I still have much nicer handwriting, and then recently I went to write something. I was like, shit, I can't write for...
Mine's so messy as anything. I can't make any sense. I was scribbling things out because I was making mistakes, and I was just like, funny, eh? What about you? What's been happening, man?
Well, I had a couple of days off work because the back kind of gave out on a couple of days. It was really painful. So anyway, the doc's given me some medication. It's kind of better. So I went back to work today. So I had some time at home and, you know, restringing some guitars and, you know, some just basic housekeeping. And I pulled out this one, which was a 62 reissue. But I just like to talk about it because, like, you know, people ask, like, what would you do with a Strat and, you know, that sort of thing. So for me, just a couple of things that I kind of prefer in a Strat these days. So I like it as close to a vintage spec as possible. But I do like a flatter radius on the fretboard.
Yeah, me too.
So I had this refretted and re-leveled to a 12-inch radius because I'm used to those with the Eric Johnson.
That's my favorite
frets.
too. The 12 is my favorite by far. Yeah.
And then he did medium jumbo stainless steel frets, which is kind of like heresy for a vintage Strat. But, you know, they never really bug me. And I like the fact that you don't have to refret it every, you know, couple of years or whatever.
What year is that guitar?
I'm reckoning this is like a 2007 or something like that.
Okay, so it's not vintage. It's vintage spec.
Vintage spec.
Oh,
so
well then.
It's called the American Vintage Reissue AVRI series. Yeah.
So, like if it was a 62 Strat and you were putting, then it'll be a different story, but if it's a reissue.
If I had a 62 Strat, I'd sell it and buy some other stuff.
And buy 5 other ones, exactly. Probably. 5 Sirs or
I'd
something.
actually buy some recording gear for the studio, you know, that'll be cool. But anyway, so apart from the fretboard, we've got the Sir Landau pickups. I'm just like used to those, you know, bog standard.
So before you go any further, you 12-inch radius, what size frets did you go for?
These are medium jumbos. So I'm liking like 6105 equivalent.
That's my favorite too.
Yeah.
And did you get the nut replaced, or is that the original one?
No. The nut got done by Ramsey. He's like a master at getting that cut just so. So, you know, it's worth it just taking any guitar to him to have that bone nut put in. So,
but you when he leveled the fretboard to make it a 12-inch radius, the nut would have had to change, right? Because I think the vintage spec, the underside of the nut is actually curved to the radius of the you know,
He popped in a new blank and he, you know, cut it and leveled it and all that stuff. So I kind of like the vintage tuners because I used to be like a hardcore locking tuner guy. You know, all my Strats had locking tuners. I've actually had very little issues with this. And that also comes down to a well-cut nut because the shit's not sticking in those slots. And also I find like setting your tremolo floating seems to be a little more stable, at least for me. And the old trick is like, you know, when you go down and the string goes sharp, you give it a pull up and, you know, it goes back to normal. That's
get it to nudge back,
yeah. So like you always tune to, you know, the depressed bar. That's what I call it. You just shove it down and you tune, shove it down and tune. And then you bend, goes up like one, and it's back in tune.
I do like the vintage tuners how they have the little slot for the string to
you
sit
poke the string in.
So you don't have that bit that kind of rips your gig bag all to pieces, right?
Pretty much. And here's another thing I found, like winding the strings down to the bottom of the post, that seems to help. Like some people,
it changes the break angle, doesn't it? On the nut.
And especially I learned that from the EJ Strats, because there is no string tree on those. So you have to kind of wind down. But those have staggered tuners, so,
I was going to say, don't they have staggered tuners so that they're actually creating the angle? That's one thing that's interesting with this. If you have a look, the headstock is actually angled back a little bit like a Gibson. So you get that break angle across the nut. It's really important. People don't talk about that. And string trees kind of only partly get you there because they don't work on the EADG, right?
Yeah. That's the thing. So I found, like, I think also on the EJ Strats, this particular angle is a little bit deeper. So if you look at this as the plane, so this would go like a bit more in this direction, in the flatter plane. So I think with this string tree, this guy's got enough, tension on this. So that's cool. The saddles, here's another thing as well. Like you sometimes I set it up and they're like jutting out. So you get these smaller screws, which, don't stick out as much. The springs, sometimes I found you got to, like, especially on these guys, on some guitars, you got to cut the spring in half so you can pull the saddle back, as far as it needs to go to intonate it. These 6 guys, I think we spoke about it before. I lift the middle 4 like a half a turn up. So I without any strings on, this bridge is bang flat on the body. And these outer 2 screws, you screw them down just so that bridge doesn't move anymore. So it's pivoting off those 2. And then these middle 4, you just raise them up a little bit. That seems to be as stable as a 2-point trem, for me.
I was going to say, essentially what you're doing is making it a 2-point trem, aren't you, by doing that?
But these middle 4, they do add some stability to it because there is a point of contact on those as well. It's just that when the screw goes in, like there's a part of it which is non-threaded, right? So that's kind of what the bridge is pivoting in. So, that's kind of still, 6 point of contact to the body.
And you went with the Sir Fletcher Landau, is that what they are?
Yeah, now they're called the V63 Plus or something, because I don't know if Landau is endorsing them anymore. But they used to be the FL, Fletcher Landau, then they became the ML, Michael Landau, and now V63 Plus or whatever. Anyway, great sounding pickups. Here's an interesting thing I like, especially on a 3 single coil one. So you use a 4-pole bridge that we've spoken about before, and this last position is the only one that uses this tone knob. And for the other 4, that's the tone knob that's active. There's a reason why is because if you have this tied directly to this, even this in-between position will have that tone knob active.
Yeah, right.
And I like to drop it down by half for just the bridge by itself. But then when you go to the in-between, I don't really need that treble roll-off. In fact, I want it, spanky. So you can actually do a mod where you can defeat the tone knobs in the in-between positions, which is, an interesting thing to do as well.
I think Carl Verheyen does that, or I remember seeing him talk about that because those in-between ones are the ones where you need the treble,
Yeah.
They tend to get too warm.
Yeah.
Okay, cool. So you went volume 2 tone.
Yes.
And did you treble bleed or no treble bleed?
Not yet on this. I'm thinking about putting one on a toggle, but I don't really want to hack any holes. So I'm going to ask my friend in the UK to send me those push pots. He's got a few of those handy. So I think just replacing one of the tone knobs with those, that's good to have it, on tap if you ever need it. And I used to have 11s on this down to E flat. That was like my SRV Hemi kind of thing. But I found I'm using it a lot less when it's in that config. So I figured if I just put a set of 10s in standard tuning, I'd use it a lot more, which has been the case. So I definitely think I'll be gigging it a lot more, this particular guitar. It's kind of warmer and fatter than the maple neck ones. Those ones have got more, they cut through a little bit more. But if you're doing a trio kind of thing, this one's really good for that sort of thing. Or if there's no other. I was
going to say, rosewood is usually warmer, isn't it?
Yeah. And then with the stainless steel frets, maybe that makes it a bit brighter. So I'll go through a few sounds. This is bang clean with the RC booster in. That's your in-between.
And your volume's on... What's your volume on? Is it on 7?
It's around 8 right now.
Around 8.
That's the middle one. That's middle and bridge. And that's neck by itself with the tone knob rolled out around halfway to 5. Still plenty of, should you need it, that's wide open. So most of the time it's maybe like 6, 5 or 6. Now when you put on distortion, like this is what happens. So you go again to the neck. Drop it down a bit. Now it's around 2 or something. So very often I'll just leave it on that setting and I'll just ride it as you go, because it still cleans up. So now we'll go to the in-between. So that's like a crunchy amp with the RC in front, midway. Now that's the middle by itself. Middle and bridge. It's good for that. That sort of thing. And bridge by itself can get pretty vicious, If I was doing more of a Blackmore thing, I'd have the tone higher up. And tone down to around 3 or something. Like borderline fuzz. Pop in some delay. Quite a useful tone. So you've got the whole range of that bridge tone dedicated to that bridge alone position. So even if I have it now rolled off there and I go to the bridge in middle, it won't have that tone knob like rolled off all the way. But then when I do go to the bridge, you've got that second tone knob that comes on. Yeah, that's kind of how I like a Strat setup.
Sounds great, man. Yeah, very cool.
And I'm guessing you've.
And did you do all this all yourself except for the frets, or did you?
Frets are not something I'm keen on doing myself. It's a bit of a tricky one, and better off going to someone who does it on a regular basis.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah,
I agree.
So you've had plenty of experiences with Strats over the years, I'm guessing.
Yep, I've had a lot of Strats actually.
Did you ever have a really good one that you kind of regret letting go of? Or?
Not particularly, no. Most of them, there's always been some issue with. I had the oldest one I had was a 72, I think it was.
Okay.
Hardtail 72. So no tremolo. It weighed a ton.
Oh, okay.
I wouldn't be surprised if it was 10 pound, Ash body, not older, hardtail. So the thing with hardtail too is now you got all this extra wood in here.
Yeah.
That would normally be hollowed out. So,
exactly.
Man, it was heavy.
Yeah.
And it was really bright, and I never really gelled with it. And I sold that, actually. I sold that and a Music Man guitar from the 70s that I had, a Sabre 1. And that's how I bought this guitar.
Oh, okay.
I traded in those two guitars, the 70s Strat, the 70s Music Man, and I got $2,000 for those. And then I paid another $4,000 for this. So I paid $6,000 for this guitar secondhand.
Wow. Even
back then.
Yeah.
Which, because 70s Strats weren't worth anything those days. You could, even getting $1,000 for it was good money. You could have sold it, But yeah, so that's the oldest one I had. Probably the longest Strat I had was a 90s one with the lace sensor pickups in it. Actually, a really good guitar, but I hated those lace sensor pickups.
Did it have the Wilkinson nut by any chance?
My one didn't, but I suspect it used to have.
Oh, okay.
It had a bone nut, but it looked like it might have been changed or something, or might have had the roller nut or something with it. But it was a really good guitar, and it was this sort of creamy red color, like a burgundy type thing. So the color was cool, played well, everything was good about it. And I swapped the pickups for Seymour Duncan SSLs.
Right.
SSLs, whichever they were, which were at the time about the only real single coil, high-end single coils you could get in New Zealand. There wasn't a lot of those. I still have a dirty old Squire Strat over there, and I've had a lot of different Strats come through my possession, but none I've really kind of gone, that's the one I'm not really much of a Strat guy, to be honest. I sort of, the thing for me with Strats is I've never been a fan of the bridge pickup on a Strat. We talked about that last week, right? It's just, I much prefer a tele in that position. So
Right.
once I bought the Telecaster, I was kind of like, well, I got that thing now, single coil there, which I need. And actually, it was the reason I bought this guitar was I wanted to have a guitar that was Strat-like, but not a Strat.
Yeah.
Because the other thing I found was everyone was playing the Strats back in the day when I got this. I got this in the 90s.
Yeah.
90s I would have got it. At 2000s, everyone was playing a Strat. And I was just like, I'm so sick of everyone playing a Strat. So how can I play a Strat but not play a Strat? And that's where this came into it.
Oh, that's cool.
But yeah. So, but Eric Johnson ones I've played are probably some of the best modern ones I've played. I played 2 or 3 of those that I've really liked. And I've often thought if one came up, I'd pick it up for sure. I've played a couple of Sirs. I really like the Sir Strats. I haven't played any of them recently, but the ones I played, I don't know, 10, 15 years ago were stunning.
Have you ever played a Tyler by any chance?
Mm-hmm. I have.
And what do you think of them?
Really good. If you want a Super Strat, that's the Super Strat, right? Yeah, fantastic. I played a couple of them in LA. I've played a bunch of vintage ones at Norm's Rare Guitars and at Guitar Center. Guitar Center in Hollywood is a place that's kind of underrated for vintage guitars.
Yeah. They've got a good
People
buyer.
know they've got
yeah.
People know they've got a vintage room there, right? But it's like you hear about Norm's Rare Guitars because it's more public, more high profile online, I guess is what I'm trying to say. But Guitar Center in Hollywood has a lot of really good guitars there. Yeah. So they had some nice Strats. My friend Lee Jackson has a 63 that I've played quite a bit. And he's often said, you can just borrow it whenever I want. And it's probably the best Strat I've ever played, period, of any Strat.
Right.
He's got Lindy Fralins in it. He swapped them out for Lindy Fralins. And he recently got it refretted with stainless steel frets. And I was like, no, don't do it. But I guess he was figuring refret it once and be done with it, you know.
Exactly.
And the frets were really bad, you know, like it needed to be done. So now I've had a bit of a thing. I was a Strat guy for a long time. But now I'm kind of, I don't know. I mean, my favorite thing really is a humbucker in the bridge. That's really where I want to live most of the time when I play bridge pickup. But I love the Strat pickup. So like 2 singles and a humbucker is a really powerful combination, in my opinion.
My first Strat was a HSS, so I'm well used to that as like the default setting. But I think once I figured out how to, get that bridge pickup with the tone roll off, you do get some really interesting sounds with that. So
totally.
Yeah. The thing is, like, I wouldn't really hit the amp straight on with it. I always need some kind of a boost that will, you just push that a bit further. Once you do that, I think then it's got enough of.
I think I would have liked Strat pickups more had I done the wiring that you've done where you wire it to just the bridge pickup with that tone control. I think that might have helped it actually quite a bit for me.
Yeah.
The other thing too that I liked about this guitar over a lot of other Strat type guitars was this is a 25-inch scale. You know, really at heart, I see myself as kind of a Gibson guy in terms of scale length.
Right.
But I find Gibsons, particularly when I get up here, getting pretty squashed in the frets.
Yeah.
I don't have huge hands, but I've got enough, you know. And then a Strat down here is getting really wide and harder to bend and stuff. So sort of this scale length of 25, you can easy enough to bend, but you can.
Yeah, a bit more than a Gibson scale.
Yeah, definitely. I also find that this headstock is way better than a Gibson. You know, Gibsons have their faults with that. You know, the angles, so they don't, the D and the G don't stay in tune very well, and all of that. Yeah. So yeah, but I've just done some modifications on this. I just did it's got the treble bleed in now.
Oh, cool.
So that's actually working really well.
Did you go with the Scott Henderson one that we talked about last time?
No.
Okay.
I tried it. What I did was I went to JK and I bought some alligator clips.
Yep.
And I clipped them on the back of the pot, and then I tried a whole bunch of
them.
I bought like about $20 worth of capacitors, which, as you'll know, is like every value and resistors. And I tried them all through them.
Yep.
I ended up going with a 1 nanofarad. I think that's what it is,
just
right?
by
Which
itself.
is standard. And then a 300K resistor.
Oh, yeah. And did you have them in parallel or in series?
Whatever you do where you have the capacitor and then you bridge across.
Oh, yeah. It's parallel.
That's parallel, isn't it?
Yep.
Yeah. So series would be if you had it on the end of the output, wouldn't you?
Yeah. They'll just basically one capacitor into one resistor, and that's across the two. That's series.
Yeah, that's right. That's series. No.
Here you go. Nick's magic combo for that guitar is what? One nanofarad and
one nanofarad and 300K resistor.
There you go.
I'm not sure I'm totally sold that it's the best option, but it was the best option of what I tried.
And is it permanently on, or you've done a bypass on it?
It's permanently on. I haven't really got any way of doing it. I'd need to change a pot to do a push-pull pot or something.
Maybe you should just buy a couple
having
of
just rewired it.
Push, and then I'll send one to you.
I've just had it all rewired, so I don't really want to mess with it just yet. I'm like, I just had it rewired to only do it again. I did think about that, but I think if I was going to do it and have it, I'd want it on a switch, which would mean probably drilling a hole somewhere, and I'm kind of like,
I saw this really cool 5-way. It was like a 2-lane 5-way. So you have 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, and then you put it in, you like how the cars change gears?
Oh, yeah.
Yeah, and you get another 5 on the other side. Pretty cool.
I haven't seen that one, but I've seen a 3-way that Leon Todd had with the same thing. It was like literally looked like a gearbox, 3 on one side and 3 on the other. It's kind of cool. Like, I don't know how intuitive that would be when you're playing, though.
Yeah, nah.
We're so used to the 5-way, but it really does make a difference on this guitar. And as usual, it's the in-betweens that you really notice it. Like if I go to this kind of tone. So that's an in-between. Like that's actually a usable tone, whereas I probably
do you find your taper of the volume is unaffected with the treble bleed?
No, it's really affected.
Oh, okay.
It's definitely not great for swells anymore.
Okay.
So now if I go,
yeah,
you can hear it's not tapering right. But I'm more likely to use a volume pedal to do that.
Yeah,
I find that what I really want from this control on this guitar is a gain control.
Right.
So if I go.
Yeah.
So it is, and it does actually, it actually lets you quite a high proportion of treble. Probably too much, but I like that on this guitar because as you're tuning down, really what you're doing is making the guitar sound thinner.
Right.
And because these are P90s, they're really fat. It's like fat Strat anyway.
Yeah.
So I find running the volume on about 6 or 7, you kind of get into the territory of a normal Strat sound. So if I'm on the neck pickup here, this is clean. Right, that sounds like a fat Strat. But if I go to 6...
Yeah.
sounds just like a Strat, you know what I mean, at that point. So it gives me more flexibility in that. And the tone control I've put, I think I mentioned I had an orange drop lying around. I think it's 0.22. Might experiment with that. I'm actually thinking I'm going to experiment with that a little bit and see where I can find the right spot.
Tell me something, your neck pickup, if you're only on your neck pickup and you play the 5th fret harmonics, do you still get sound or is it disappearing? Okay, now play that same thing with your bridge pickup and see if there's a huge difference. Yeah. So that's it. Basically, even on a Strat, this neck pickup is directly on a harmonic node. So if you do this, fuck all. But if so apparently that's
definitely. I'd never thought about that before because I guess it makes sense, doesn't it? Because if it's 5, 7, 12, that would be 5, 7.
No, so it's basically four different parts, right? Here, 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 and here. It's quarters on the string. Yeah. So apparently that's one of the reasons why the Strat neck pickup has that bell-like tone, because it's right. Someone mentioned that. I was like, okay, that could be it. So it's interesting that even the PRS has got the same alignment.
Yeah, well, I mean, and it's not a hot pickup now. These are probably in the range of where a Strat would be. These are 6.7K, I think, and then that one's 7.5, so it's slightly hotter, but. Just works now, so I'm really pleased with that. With having the treble bleed has really brought this guitar.
Just looking up the DC resistance of these ones I've got in here. They mentioned them. Yeah, so the neck and middle are 6.5K and the bridge is 7.2. So it looks like it's kind of
same ballpark.
Yeah. exactly.
But the thing with the P90, and this is what Glenn was saying too, is that they do have a bigger magnet and a wider magnetic field. I'd imagine too, because DC is only one rating. What's the other one? Is it inductance?
Yeah.
Impedance? No, is it inductance?
Probably inductance, yeah.
So I imagine the inductance on a P90 would be in a different place than where it would be on a Strat. Yeah.
Okay.
Even though they're same rating in terms of KO amount. Interesting thing with this guitar too is it's quite different construction. I mean, it's maple top with a mahogany body.
Mm-hmm.
So it's kind of Les Paul-like in that sense, and with a maple neck that's glued in.
Yeah.
It's sort of, a different kind of proposition. Because I'd imagine if you took these pickups out and put them in your Strat, it'd be a very different sounding guitar.
Yeah, for sure. I'm guessing there's a lot more mid-range content that just the body is, generating itself. Yeah.
And with the pickups it had in there before, I think it was too much, which is why Glenn and I talked about these. And he said he already had them in mind to build like a lower wind P90, and they're really awesome.
Yeah.
I've been so pleased with these because they still have that P90 thing. They're still pushing pretty hard. Still gonna give it that kick, but
here's the funny thing, like people think that Another Brick in the Wall solo is like the quintessential Strat tone, but it's a P90 Les Paul.
And I think it was DI'd too.
Yeah, no, so they DI'd it apparently, but then they ran it out of the console again back into some reamping scenario, and then they mic'd it and ran that in parallel with the DI. So there's actually a DI running with the amp on the side just to grit it up a bit. You can kind of hear some of that amp grit in it, it's not totally...
But it's interesting, if you ran it into the disc DI, and then you come out and reamp, I'd imagine in those days too, reamping wouldn't be like now where there's like all these fancy boxes and stuff to do it. They probably just had a DI and box in reverse.
In reverse,
so it was probably hitting the amp pretty hard, like harder than the guitar would have hit it. Just probably why it has that sort of...
That grit?
Really compressed.
I guess
and
just
grit.
From the fader, they were just doing it by ear, I don't think they were actually matching levels or whatever.
Yeah, interesting.
Yeah.
Because it's killer, isn't it? But funny, isn't it? The most famous Strat solo of all time wasn't a Strat.
Yeah. Have you done much reamping yourself?
I have, yes. I used to have a reamp box, and I sold it when we moved to Europe. But yeah, I really like it, and it's actually, when I'm recording, I always record a DI track as well.
Mm-hmm.
Nowadays, I often just put that through a plug-in, but I often think if it was anything kind of serious, I'd send you the DI and I'd get you to reamp it through those lovely amps.
I've got a nice reamp box here. That's the radial JCR.
That's the exact same one I had.
I like this one because it's got that treble cut, and very often you're putting it in, it starts sounding a bit too harsh. Then just, that little treble cut makes all the difference. And yeah, you're right. I think the level, you got to be really careful how hard you hit the amp. I kind of do it by ear, just like how kind of I'm writing my guitar volume in a similar situation. So
yeah, if it sounds good, it is good, right?
Yeah, pretty much.
It's funny. I sold my one to Stephen Gallagher. Do you know Stephen?
I do.
Gallagher?
Yeah, I mean, I've interacted with him a couple of times online. I haven't met him in person, but yeah, cool guy.
Awesome guy. Yeah. Awesome guy. Yeah, he just wrote the music for the new Lord of the Rings. The animated version, and he was the editor for the Beatles.
Yeah, that's the
movie.
thing.
Yeah, amazing guy. I've known him for ages. Actually, I knew him more as a keyboard player first than actually before he got into the film composing thing. He used to be in a bunch of bands like the Hairy Lollies and all these bands around town. But anyway, I sold him the reamp unit, and I was like, damn, I should have held on to that. It was kind of useful. But then it was a couple $100 or whatever I got for it, and it meant more time in Europe to go and spend on our trip.
Cool. Yeah. I think I'd spoken to Leon about that. I was like, I'll send you some DI tracks, you send me some, and we'll reamp each other's, tracks. So if you ever want to get in on that, you can be the third partner in this experiment.
Oh man, if I had a reamp box,
just send me the DIs.
Stevie. I should talk to Stevie G and just say, hey, can I borrow that reamp that I sold you?
Cool. Yeah, I mean, for me, it becomes really interesting because then, just with the whole reactive load scenario, the whole reamping thing is silent as well. And, the results are repeatable. Otherwise, you're always moving the mic and then, oh shit, today the humidity is a bit low. There's so many variables with that. So You know,
it's funny you say that. Though on my last album, the reamped album, we recorded a DI, and we also recorded the amp that was there. They had a 65 or a 64 Princeton black panel. I never actually got to see the amp. It was in an ISO booth, and I just basically said turn it up to about 3.5, 4, and that was that. But when I got home, there was a couple little bits that I reamped through my Fractal actually, and put them in, and nobody's been able to spot which bits they are yet.
Oh, okay.
So, but it's pretty easy. You go to a Princeton model and you dial it up and get it sounding. You can get it pretty damn close, so people wouldn't know.
Have you tried the Axe amp models with any other speaker simulation rather than what's already in the Axe?
No, I haven't. No.
That would be interesting.
The only other thing I've done in there, kind of experimenting along those lines, was those acoustic IRs that I loaded in, which were really useful. You know, and in which case I'll bypass the amp and the cab. I'll still use all the other effects, but I bypass the amp and cab and run it through an IR instead in the cab module, and that works really well, especially for nylon string guitar.
Oh yeah, for sure.
Because nylon string DI sucks. You know, it's just awful.
Yeah.
But you run it through an IR, and all of a sudden it's got all that. It sounds like a mic'd up nylon string. It's fantastic. So.
Yeah. I used to do that with the HX because sometime back I had a Strat which had that Fishman power bridge in it, and it had a TRS out, so the electric was on the tip and the piezo was on the ring. And if you use the long cable which had a TRS on this side and 2 jacks on the other side, the Helix had 2 inputs, so you could use input 1 for electric, input 2 for the piezo 1, and you could get your patches to actually switch which input, by the preset, which input it was listening to. So I could, just hit one foot switch and I was playing electric, hit another foot switch and go to this acoustic sound. And it did work pretty well, especially in the middle of a song, you got to change guitars. It's not really possible. But that was a nice little situation. I sometimes kind of wish I had kept one guitar with that Fishman in it, but
Yeah, I had a Porried Smith that was like that. I had one of the hollow body Porried Smiths. I think it was a hollow body 2, and it was a spruce top.
Okay.
So it sort of had a more lively acoustic. It was a bit thicker than this guitar, but it wasn't like they made 2 versions. They made one that was sort of about that thick, and then they made one that was normal, like a 335 type. So it was like a smaller, more comfortable 335, but it had a piezo setup in there, and it actually had 2 outputs on the output jack.
Okay.
One of the things I hated about it was it had 2 outputs though, but it was also a great thing because I'd often plug the guitar in a hurry on a gig, and I'd plug in the wrong one and then be like, oh, damn it. But it was super handy to actually have the 2 outputs on separate controls and stuff.
Right.
And that would be a really interesting use case because you could go electric and then on your Fractal hit another scene, which turns the amps off and turns the IR on.
Correct.
But go with that other one, and actually you'd probably have a pretty convincing acoustic sound, especially if it's an IR sculpting it. Do you know what I mean?
Yeah. I found that acoustic IRs accompanied by like a room sound, and then you send that into a slightly bigger reverb, so you almost have like 2 cascading reverbs, and then the room thing just gives it a bit of space and dimension, not like so in your face, and then the bigger reverb you can add less of it just to give it some tail. And for that sort of thing, even chorus works or detune, that stuff works really nice to spread. It does sound a bit processed, but in the right context it can be a cool thing.
That was the 80s, man, wasn't it? That was the 80s. Was chorus on everything, right? Actually, I saw a great video today of Rob Harris. I don't know if you know Rob, but he's the guitar player in that band, Jamiroquai. But session guy, and he's based in Cambridge, although I think a lot of people think he's in London. But he did a video today on his YouTube channel, and he talked about stacking parts and what he does to get a classic kind of sound. And he had a Duesenberg through his quad Cortex, and he recorded this matchless amp kind of breakup sound, and then he did this exact same thing but switched to the middle pickup to have both pickups on, right? So you're getting a different tone for the other side. So bridge pickup, then middle pickup, and then he got his Strat. He's just got a new Patrick Eagle signature Strat, and he got his Strat and he put it on position 4, so your neck and middle, and then he turned the amp and the cab off,
Right.
and put a little bit of chorus and a little bit of and quite a bit of reverb, and used the tremolo and played the exact same part he played before, but up an octave, and with a little bit of wiggle, and then blended that in just like 20 or 30%. And man, that adds the little shimmer on the top of all the other chords. That's just. And it was a really good thing to do, and I thought, man, I got to remember that little technique. That was a good one. Yeah.
Or even like the capo one play, different inversions and stuff like that. That's.
But I never thought to turn the amp and the cab off.
All
and
right.
Go for that really
clean.
It's almost DI.
Yeah.
Do you know what I mean? But you could do that with a DI track. But the difference is when you play it the second time, there'd be slight discrepancies.
Yeah.
And that would be the sweetness, I reckon.
Yeah. Not to mention an octave
like double
higher.
tracking.
Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah, I often use my 12 string. I've got one of the Courtney Love Squire 12 strings back there.
Right.
I often use that for recording for exactly that, to get that octave up kind of sound, and put that in a mix. And
have you ever used the Nashville tuning guitar?
Yes, I have.
Yeah.
Yeah, I don't actually currently have a guitar doing that, but a friend of mine has a Strat set up for that. And last time I was recording for him, that was the guy I did that stuff. Remember I told you I did that, got that Marshall, and we just wound it up on full in the studio. So same guy, he's got a Strat in Nashville tuning that he just leaves all the time.
Right.
I find guitars like that, if I have a guitar that's so specific like that, I might use it once a year, and the rest of the time it's just sitting there.
Yeah.
So it sort of becomes...
I think I've got one sitting here, in fact, just like that.
Oh, you do?
I just hope it's in tune. So. So it's like, And the thing is, you get these... something like that. It's quite cool.
It's an awesome sound. David Gilmour used that on a few things, didn't he? Like
on Hey You.
Hey You, yeah. There's a... do you know who Ella Ray Feingold is, the guitar player?
Yeah, I do, yeah.
Ella has this inverted tuning thing. Have you seen her inverted tuning that she uses?
No, tell me more about it.
So it's EADGBE,
right.
regular guitar tuning, but the strings are all flipped the
around,
other way.
Right.
So your E string is now your thinnest.
Yeah.
Your A string is actually a B string in terms of thickness, but it's tuned to A. D and G are just swapped, right?
Right.
And so you play like you're playing a regular guitar.
Oh, okay.
But the whole thing is
flipped
on itself.
Yeah.
And so even if you play like a simple chord like say this,
it got the other order of frequencies.
It comes out as and something like this.
Right.
A sharp 9 chord all of a sudden is kind of flipped on its head and almost sounds like a close voicing piano voicing.
Cool.
It's really a fascinating thing. I remember talking to her briefly online about it and said, hey, how do you do this? And sent me a sheet with kind of the breakdown of it and what gauge strings to use.
Right.
I thought maybe I should convert one of these guitars to that, but which one? Which one do I want to give up on for regular kind of playing?
What about that cheap Strat?
But I quite like having the cheap Strat for students, right? Yeah. When the reasons I bought that guitar was to have here. If someone comes and they haven't got a guitar, I go, there you go, play this. And if it's an inverted tuning, that would totally screw them up.
Exactly. They'll be wondering what the hell happened.
Yeah. Serve you right for not bringing your guitar.
Yeah. True.
I heard Mike Marino does that to students. He has a crappy guitar that's unplayable with about 3 centimeter action on it, like the string's like miles out. Yeah. So if people don't bring guitar, he's like, well, play the piece of crap and good luck.
Yeah. I've got this friend of mine who had a string endorsement, and he was changing strings on his guitar, so he took the cutters and went clip, 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 clip. And his dad's a guitar player too, so his dad started yelling at him, saying like, in my day we had like, if the string broke, we had to tie a knot in it and play.
Tie a knot.
And you're just cutting perfectly good strings.
Yeah.
Oh well.
Funny, eh?
Yeah.
Funny.
Speaking of strings, you've got 10s on that guitar as well, or you've got the 11s?
Yeah, 10 to 46. I've kind of gone down to 10 to 46 on a lot of my guitars now.
Yeah.
The Gibson scale ones, so like the Les Paul and what have you, I'll still keep 11s. But anything Strat or PRS, I'm going 10 to 46. I think I mentioned I started getting pain in my arm and We'll Rock You, and that was when I was like, I'm not even risking that again. Even though it wasn't related to heavier strings, I'm just like, I'm not going there.
Yeah.
So in 10s, I found like this guitar really suits 10s. Like if I play something like the tremolo is now really nice. It's got 4 springs in it, but I found with 11s I had to have 5 springs, which made the tremolo much stiffer. And the whole guitar this suits having 10s. It's actually quite a heavy feeling neck. It's a quarter sawn neck. So when you have quarter sawn necks, they definitely feel heavier to play. So this feels like it's probably got 11s on it anyway.
Right. And is your bridge floating or is it decked?
Yeah. No, it's floating.
Oh, okay, cool.
And the crazy thing is it never seems to go out of tune. There's no locking tuners on this, but it'll go out of tune now. It'll be just my luck. A little bit, considering I dive bombed it fully without locking tuners, and I think it's because it's got this really good, the old PRS nut. There was some composite of some sort,
right?
So it works really well there, and the saddles seem to be really good. So everything there's nothing catching, so it seems to work really well.
Have you ever heard a Led Zeppelin song called "In the Evening"?
No.
Oh, you should check that out because that's one of the few songs that Jimmy Page uses a Strat on. And apparently it was this blue 64 Strat. And when the solo comes in, he depresses the bar all the way down and he lets it go. So you hear this sound almost like a door breaking down. It goes, and then the solo comes in. And he does it a couple of times in the solo. And it's like one of the coolest sounds I heard. But you can tell that bloody trem is sticking on everything. It's not set up properly. But just the sound of it going boop, 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 boop. Check that song out. It's quite interesting. Maybe I'll put a little snippet of it over here. And, and make you listen to what it sounds like. Yeah,
that'd be cool, yeah. It's funny how things like that happen, There's a film score which Tommy Tedesco did that apparently they wanted the sound of like an explosion, so he got the guitar and just threw it on the ground with the volume up on full, and of course when it hit the ground, it went, and that was the sound they wanted.
Yeah. There was one time this guy said, can you make the intro of the solo sound like thunder? I was like, so there was a twin reverb in the studio. I said, yeah, sure, just mic that up and turn it up to full and give it a kick. When you kick a reverb tank, it just gets that sound. He was damn happy with that sound. I said you could have just used the sound effect, but oh well.
Yeah, but it's something organic about that, isn't it? Right, because it's real. I guess you've seen that movie June, the
original one or the new one,
the remake.
Oh yeah.
And Guthrie Govan actually played the bagpipes in it.
Oh, yeah.
Because there's those bagpipes in the scene. And he said he actually recorded 32 guitar takes.
Wow.
And all these different layers, and he made it up to sound like bagpipes. But they wanted bagpipes, but they didn't want bagpipes.
Right. Yeah.
And so that's the thing, because they could have just got a bagpipe player.
Totally.
But by him doing that, it sort of gave it this otherworldly thing, like which June, right?
Mm-hmm.
But I thought that was an interesting thing, that he did that, and he said he could only do that once he switched to the fractal, because he's fully on the fractal thing now.
Yeah,
using an FM9 because, he said there's things he can do with that he can't do with his live rig.
Mm-hmm.
Like the 32 tracks for the thing that he did was all this processing and stuff on it. And one thing he said he does live is he has 2 volume pedals, and he actually fades from one amp to the other and crossfades between them. And he said he couldn't do that with his old setup, all kinds of stuff like that. But yeah, it was interesting. There you go, bagpipes, but they didn't want bagpipes. So
there used to be this old, I think it was a Frank Zappa thing where he, used to do the. Let me see if I still remember. Yeah, something like this. Let me just do it again. something like that with just jabbing the pick, you kind of get like that little flutter that the bagpipes do. It was quite interesting.
I guess you've heard that George Benson thing of him trying to emulate bagpipes.
Nah, show us.
He goes to Ireland, and he asked people what should I not do, and they said, whatever you do, don't go to Ireland and play Danny Boy.
Okay.
And so he does the whole so he plays Danny Boy, but he goes all that sort of stuff to sort of make it sound like and he does this whole intro, and it's pretty incredible. And he finishes this intro, and then he looks back to the band to cue them to come in, and you can see the guy playing rhythm guitar, Michael O'Neill. You see Michael O'Neill just go, wow. I've spoken to Mike a couple of times about playing with George Benson, and he was he said that some gigs George won't play guitar at all.
Okay.
He'll just like sing, and then but he said about once every 2 or 3 gigs, GB grabs out the guitar and just let's rip.
Yep.
And it's almost like it's a reminder to everyone, hey,
I can still play.
It's still here.
Yeah.
I haven't gone anywhere,
Yeah.
But he says sometimes he won't play much at all, and then other times, like about every second or third gig, he lets rip on it. You know.
I've heard more than a few people call him like the best jazz guitar player of his generation, which could well be
Without
true.
a doubt.
Yeah, totally.
I think so, for sure.
Except
I'd say before him it was probably Wes Montgomery, but interesting thing, George Benson talks about going to see Pat Martino for the first time, and he said that he was a young guy, just got to New York from Philly. I think he's from Philly, and he just got to New York, and he thought he was the big man strutting around town, I'm George Benson or whatever. And then he walked into a bar and he heard Pat Martino play, and he said, let's pack up and let's go home. He said, if everybody in New York plays like this, I don't want to be here. Yeah. He soon realized that not everybody plays like Pat Martino, that, he was a bit freakish, but intimidating,
Yeah.
Yeah.
That's good.
Would have been for
good
sure.
that, even at that level, they still have the humility to know that, there's still more to be done or whatever. Because apparently, like Hendrix, someone asked him, like, what's it like being the best guitar player in the world? And he said, I don't know, go ask Derek Kath from Chicago. So.
Yeah. I heard a similar thing with Eric Clapton, and he said something about Jeff Beck.
Yeah.
Similar thing.
Yeah.
Or it was some award thing, Yeah. Interesting, isn't it? Yeah, well, the thing is, you never stop learning, do you? It's like, every time I think I've got some stuff figured out, I'm like, there's always more.
Yeah.
And actually, with what I do is, and probably with what you do too, we do quite specific kind of things,
Mm-hmm.
You start looking into something like classical guitar, and you go, there's a whole another world there that I don't even I've scratched the surface of.
Mm-hmm.
Or the Brazilian thing, the flamenco or Brazilian guitar, or even country, man. I can bluff a little bit of country, like I got my 2 or 3 licks I can do. But it's like I'm bluffing it,
Yeah.
Like they can do like that much.
Yeah.
But whereas you see someone like Vince Gill play, or any one of those number of those Nashville guys, like Brent Mason, and you just go, wow.
The funny thing is, my parents they listened to a lot of country music when I was growing up. My dad
Really?
he taught me this, like, like the finger does the something like that, And then later on, I was like, there's this Zeppelin song called Hot Dog, which goes, oh fuck, it's really. Something like that. And it's like all the secondhand influence from Eagles, and and then you kind of go and listen to I found this nice documentary on the history of country music, and I started watching it, and I was like, shit, there's so many different little variations, like the Bakersfield sound, and what you normally think is country is, there's like, it could be from a few different regions, and like the old bluegrass stuff, which I love, that shit is like beyond any ability I have, but I just love listening to it. So
it's amazing. Yeah, well, bluegrass is a whole different thing again, isn't it?
Yeah.
I got this theory about Slash from Guns N' Roses that he's really a country player.
Well, he's taking pedal steel lessons now, apparently. You know that?
right? And then it goes, and then the second time, you know, and you know, all that sort of stuff.
Yeah, he does a lot of these bends, right? That's the song called Patience.
Totally.
He plays this. Something like that, you know.
It sounds like country music, right? If you take the distortion off it, like what we're doing now,
Yeah.
it kind of sounds pretty country. And I think that's sort of a thing, you know. Screwed up country, but it's country nonetheless.
Yeah. And then there's this whole rockabilly thing as well, which I really love. I think because probably of Jeff Beck, you know. He kind of said, "Oh, go listen to Cliff Gallup and all that stuff." So I was like, okay, let's go and have a listen. So that
one of the best gigs I ever went to was I just finished playing at the Lido, and I bumped into Darren Watson afterwards because he had just finished his gig around the corner, and we sat and had a bit of a yarn. And then he said, "Oh, I'm going to this Slim Jim Phantom gig tonight. You want to come?" So I ended up going on a whim. Mm-hmm. You know, Slim Jim Phantom was the drummer in
the Stray Cats.
Yep. And he had this guy Daryl Hyham with him.
Imelda's husband, right?
Guitar player. Yeah. And then he had an Australian bass player, who was a rockabilly guy. And they played, and it was amazing. Slim Jim did the old cocktail drum kit standing, you know. The three of them sang harmonies that were just incredible. Daryl Hyam's a good guitar player, man. It was like legit rockabilly. And all these dudes walking in with their rockabilly haircuts and their, you know, it was really quite a cool gig to go and see. And I bought the poster from it afterwards, and after that I was a fan, you know. I was right into it. It's awesome.
I think in Auckland they have these vintage car festivals, and then they have a bunch of these rockabilly bands. There's one really good one called the Recliner Rockers. I don't know if you've heard them.
Recliner Rockers? Yeah. Are they old people or something?
Well, kind of getting there, I guess. But they've got a really good guitar player, this guy called Al Larvis, and I last saw him maybe 10 or 15 years ago. Man, but that guy he could rip. He knew that style really well. In fact, he was the first person I saw with a pedal train in New Zealand. And I went to him after the gig. I said, "Oh, what's that?" He's saying, "Oh, this new pedal boards come out and everything." I think I just got one the next week after seeing that.
It's funny how that works, isn't it? Like if you sort of see something new. Like I remember the first time I ever saw a Paul Reed Smith guitar was Gary Verburn.
Okay.
Do you know Gary?
No, I don't.
You probably don't. He doesn't really play anymore. I think he's like a computer programmer or something. But in the 90s, 2000s, he was on everything in New Zealand. Like he was, you know, When the Cat's Away, What We Need Is a Great Big Melting Pot and all those sort of things. That was Gary Verburn playing. But if you watch that song, Melting Pot, watch the video, there's Gary Verburn playing a Paul Reed Smith Custom 24 or 22, I forget which one. But I'd never seen, I was like, what the hell is that? And I was like, that, and someone said, oh, that's a Paul Reed Smith. It's like this super boutique custom guitar.
Right.
And I was like, wow, you know, that's so cool. And then, and Gary Verburn, like the top session player of the day, plays one, so that must be a thing. So then, and when I saw this, it kind of the seed was sown, so to speak. You know?
Nice.
Yeah, it's a shame he doesn't play anymore. I think he does occasionally.
Okay.
I know he did a Lady Killers gig earlier in the year, because I think they were doing something in Cambridge or around that kind of area.
Right.
But man, that guy can play. He was the guy. You know, he was on everything. The Bic Runga stuff, you know, Drive and all those songs with the beautiful tremolo sounds. That was Gary Verburn.
Oh, nice.
I think it was him. Yeah.
Sweet.
Funny, eh?
Yeah.
And then he came to his senses and found a way to make money that wasn't music.
Yeah, you know how they say, right? How to make $1 million in the music business? Start with 2 million. Yeah.
and then go on tour. Yeah. Start with 2 million and go on tour.
Yeah.
Exactly.
Oh well. I guess it's very just waiting for Lotto, I guess.
Yeah. And tell me, what have you got coming up in the next little while? You got anything around the corner?
Well, I've got those couple of gigs in India in November, and I just realized I should start practicing some of that stuff because I haven't played it in a while. So, and there's a couple of local gigs which are in the pipeline. Just got asked for some dates to block those in.
Is that before you go?
Yeah,
in
before I
November,
go.
or?
Yeah. It'll be sometime October.
Is that with Ben by any chance?
Yeah, Ben's back in town, so yeah, we should be having a couple of gigs with him. I think Cat Dunks is back as well. So
awesome.
I end up playing with those two the most, I think. And then that's the thing, in November, I've got a 1 week trip, and then I go back in mid-December for another 2 weeks. So it's like a little bit of a back and forth.
How many hours is the flight?
It's 10 to Singapore and 5.5 to Mumbai. Or you could...
So basically a whole day with all your transfers and everything.
But if you go to India, kind of gaining time, so, you'll leave in the morning and you reach in the morning on the same day.
But then you lose it on the way back, right?
You lose it on the way back, exactly.
Yeah.
Yeah, that's the worst, in fact. That's when I actually feel the jet lag the most, when I come back. Going there is kind of, I stabilize pretty quickly, but coming back, it's like I need a day or two to recover from that. There's another flight via Sydney. If you take Qantas to Sydney and then Sydney to Bangalore is a direct flight. So if the gig's in Bangalore, in fact, when I go in November, I'll fly into Bombay, but I'll come back from Bangalore. So yeah.
Nice.
And you've got anything interesting coming up? I think I saw an ad for your double drummer gig. You got another one of those coming up?
Yeah, we're playing at the Jazz Festival in Wellington. Okay. So I've got Stan Bicknell driving down to come and do that. So I've got Stan and I've got Darren and I've got Leo playing for that. So that'll be fun.
Yeah, I think you'll probably get like a rocket boost or something going off with those two guys on drums.
Oh man, they're ridiculous. They're so ridiculous. It's like half the time I just stop playing and don't need to do anything. It's sounding amazing with them. You know what I mean? Yeah. And the interesting thing, a lot of Wellington cats don't know Stan.
Okay.
Even like the Jazz Festival people, they were around here the other day, and some of the people involved in organising it, I was at a meeting with them, and I said, they said, you're doing the double drummer thing. And I said, yeah. And I said, I'm really looking forward to bringing Stan down, because people down in Wellington don't know him. And they didn't know who Stan was.
Okay.
And I was like, come on. Like, I was like, he was Kimbra's drummer for ages, and then and they were like, oh, okay. And then I said, and he plays in this band called Black Comet with Lawton and that, and they were like, oh, okay. And I said, and he's touring with Natasha Bedingfield at the end of the year, this pop singer. And then they were like, oh, wow. And I was like, yeah, well, you all should pay attention. You know what I mean? Like he's...
Yeah, man.
But I don't think they know who I am either, though.
There's so many great musicians in this country. I think just like the world needs to know, more about. So yeah. Maybe we'll get a few.
That's where this podcast comes in, right? We get them in as guests.
We'll get them in as guests for sure. Cool, man. I'll look forward to the next one. We got to wrap before this bloody thing tells me I'm out of hard disk space. So, yeah, see you guys.
Thanks, everyone. Thanks for watching.
And we'll catch you soon. Bye-bye.